vedeṣu yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva. Dāneṣu yat puṇya-phalaṁ pradiṣṭam. Atyeti tat sarvam idaṁ viditvā. Yogī paraṁ sthānam upaiti cādyam. Vedeṣu yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva. Dāneṣu yat puṇya-phalaṁ pradiṣṭam. Atyeti tat sarvam idaṁ viditvā. Yogī paraṁ sthānam upaiti cādyam.
vedeṣu yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva. dāneṣu yat puṇya-phalaṁ pradiṣṭam. atyeti tat sarvam idaṁ viditvā. yogī paraṁ sthānam upaiti cādyam. vedeṣu yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva. dāneṣu yat puṇya-phalaṁ pradiṣṭam. atyeti tat sarvam idaṁ viditvā. yogī paraṁ sthānam upaiti cādyam.
vedeṣu yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva. dāneṣu yat puṇya-phalaṁ pradiṣṭam. atyeti tat sarvam idaṁ viditvā. yogī paraṁ sthānam upaiti cādyam.
vedeṣu yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva.
Vedeṣu yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva.
Dāneṣu yat puṇya-phalaṁ pradiṣṭam. Atyeti tat sarvam idaṁ viditvā. Yogī paraṁ sthānam upaiti cādyam.
Vedeṣu, in the study of the Vedas. Yajñeṣu, in the performances of yajna, sacrifice. Tapaḥsu, in undergoing different types of austerities. Cha, also. Idaṁ, certainly. Dāneṣu, in giving charities. Yat, that which. Puṇya-phalaṁ, result of pious work. Pradiṣṭam, indicating. Atyeti, surpasses. Tat sarvam, all goes. Idaṁ, this. Viditvā, knowing. Yogī, the devotee. Paraṁ, supreme. Sthānam, abode. Upaiti, achieves. Cha, also. Cādyam, original. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these. And at the end, he reaches the supreme, eternal abode. Purport. This verse is the summation of the 7th and 8th chapters, which particularly deal with Krishna consciousness and devotional service. One has to study the Vedas under the guidance of the spiritual master and undergo many austerities and penances while living under his care. A brahmachari has to live in the home of the spiritual master, just like a servant, and he must beg alms from door to door and bring them to the spiritual master. He takes food only under the spiritual master's order, and if the master neglects to call the student for food that day, the student fasts. These are some of the Vedic principles for observing brahmacharya. After the student studies the Vedas under the master for some time, at least from age 5 to 20, he becomes a man of perfect character. Study of the Vedas is not meant for the recreation of armchair speculators, but for the formation of character. After this training, the brahmachari is allowed to enter into household life and marry. When he's a householder, he has to perform many sacrifices so that he may achieve further enlightenment. He must also give charity according to country, time, and candidate, discriminating among charity in goodness, in passion, and in ignorance, as described in Bhagavad-gītā. Then, after retiring from household life, upon accepting the order of vanaprastha, he undergoes severe penances, living in forests, dressing with tree bark, not shaving, etc. Yeah, white sword trooper. I'm not going to be happy here. Liberators. By carrying out the orders of brahmacharya, household life, vanaprastha, and finally sannyas, one becomes elevated to the perfectional stage of life. Some are then elevated to the heavenly kingdoms, and when they become even more advanced, they are liberated in the spiritual sky, either in the impersonal Brahmajyoti, or in the Vaikuntha planets, or Krishna Loka. This is the path outlined by Vedic literature. Om Jnana-Timiram Hasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshur-Nidikam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutane Swayam Rupa Gadadvaita Tathati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnava Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Pradijana Sehitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Viditvā Sri Vishakhantitam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Nīlabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kamshana Gaurani Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanam Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kripa sindho yaivacha Pakitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vāsani Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vedeṣu yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva dāneṣu puṇya-phalaṁ atyeti sarvam viditvā yogī sthānam. Srila Prabhupada begins by outlining the traditional varnashram karma system. This word Hindu is a foreign word, foreign to the Vedic literature. The original term is Sanatana Dharma. And the Sanatana Dharma system is, the Sanatana Dharma is varnashram. The division of society into 4 social orders and 4 spiritual orders. 4 orders of occupation and 4 orders of progress through different stages of life. So here Srila Prabhupada describes those ashrams, brahmachari, vanaprastha, grihastha, vanaprastha, and something else. So that in those orders we find all of these things. Vedeṣu, yajñeṣu, tapaḥsu, dāneṣu. In brahmachari life, vedeṣu, the brahmacharis study the Vedas, the Vedic literature, under the guidance of the spiritual master, and they're taught in the development of character. The modern system of so-called education doesn't care about the development of character, or they give some lip service, or they have some idea about character, but it's a pretty loose idea. And we see the practical result that people are produced, students are produced who behave like cats and dogs. And so the colleges and universities are places of learning and indiscriminate sex. That's just the way it is. Srila Prabhupada gave a story where you walk through a university campus and they're so well endowed and they're this building and that building and so many wonderful facilities. But they produce men of low character. Prabhupada gave the example of the Himalayas, and it was said that the Himalayas were supposed to, the word went out that the Himalayas were going to give birth to a child. So the greatest mountains of the world were going to give birth to a child. So people gathered from all directions to see what kind of child would come. And at the predicted time, the earth began shaking and trembling, and rumbling was heard, and the mountain cracked open, and out of the little crack, some rats began running. So the Himalayas gave birth to some rats. We'll probably compare this to the modern university education, where they produce men of such high character. But the Vedic system means that from the very beginning, the students were taught to control their senses, which is not in the curriculum in the modern scheme of things. But they were taught to control their senses and to engage as menial servants of the spiritual master, who is the representative of Krishna. So, monastery prajna paraṁ. According to the instructions of Prabhupada, they were trained in Bhagavad-gītā, the monastery. So, vedeṣu. They would study the Vedas. Vedeṣu, yajñeṣu, and in householder life, one is supposed to perform different yajñas, sacrifices, according to the traditional system. The kings would perform grand-scale sacrifices. But all of the householders, there's something, tapaḥsu, because one inevitably performs sinful activities in the course of daily life. You pick up a glass and put it down, you kill so many living entities. You walk on the grass, kill so many living entities. Light a fire to cook, kill so many living entities. And if one is living for one's own happiness, then one has to pay for all these things. So there are some yajñas that the householders are supposed to perform for purification. And dāneṣu, the householders are supposed to give charity. Of course, the kings would give great charity, but every householder was expected to give charity. The brahmacharis are purified by Vedic study and by living as humble servants of the spiritual master. And the householders are purified by charity. Srila Rupa Goswami set the example of giving half of his income, half of his collected wealth, for the service of the Lord and the Vaishnavas. Of dāna. Yajñeṣu tapaḥsu caiva bhavanani manishi. In Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna says that yajña and charity, yajña and tapa, austerity, are purifying for everyone. And therefore no one should give them up. So the householders are supposed to perform yajñas, sacrifices, and give charity. And then in the vanaprastha life, austerity. Because in householder life, one becomes attached to material comfort, material enjoyment. But one is not supposed to remain in that attachment and so-called enjoyment for the whole of one's life. Therefore, in the later stage, the vanaprastha ashram is to be accepted. Even great opulent kings, like Prithu Maharaj and others, would leave home. They gave up their kingdom, went off to the forest, gave up their royal dress, gave up their royal comforts, and lived in severe austerity. Here it's mentioned living in tree bark. We're in tree bark, living on roots and berries. This is how the vanaprasthas live. Vedeṣu, yajñeṣu, tapaḥsu, and the sannyasis also are meant to undergo austerity after the vanaprastha stage and sannyas. This is the traditional system for gradual advancement in spiritual life, or even in pious life. Actually, the system is meant for reaching Krishna. Vedeṣu sarvam. But people would follow the system, at least for getting puṇya-phalaṁ. Maybe they would want to go to the heavenly planets. Maybe they would hope that in their next birth they would be wealthy, or they would have good fortune in this or that way. At least that they would not be overwhelmed by sinful reactions. So those who are more advanced would follow this system for the sake of spiritual enlightenment, and those who were less advanced would follow it for the sake of getting puṇya-phalaṁ, or pious credit. But here, Srila Prabhupada indicates, or Krishna indicates, that by Krishna consciousness, the beauty of Krishna consciousness is that by one stroke, by engaging in devotional service, one can surpass all the rituals of the different orders of life. Sarvam idaṁ, all of it. Atyeti means one attains or one surpasses. Prabhupada translates it both ways. One has to go through so much trouble by following all of these practices, all of these disciplines. But without Krishna consciousness, the gain is not substantial. And if one performs Krishna consciousness, then one goes beyond all of the whole realm of the Vedas. He goes beyond. He gets whatever there might be to attain and surpasses all of this. The words idaṁ viditvā indicate that one should understand the instructions given by Sri Krishna in this chapter and the 7th chapter of Bhagavad-gītā. One should try to understand these chapters not by scholarship or mental speculation, but by hearing them in association with devotees. Chapters 7 through 12 are the essence of Bhagavad-gītā. The first 6 and the last 6 chapters are like coverings for the middle 6 chapters, which are specially protected by the Lord. If one is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad-gītā, especially these middle 6 chapters, in the association of devotees, then his life at once becomes glorified beyond all penances, sacrifices, charities, speculations, etc. For one can achieve all the results of these activities simply by Krishna consciousness. In Bhagavad-gītā, the first 6 chapters deal generally with karma yoga. The last 6 chapters deal especially with jnana yoga, and the middle 6 especially with bhakti yoga. Of course, one finds something of everything throughout Bhagavad-gītā, and especially throughout Bhagavad-gītā one finds devotional service, bhakti yoga. But these middle 6 chapters particularly focus on bhakti yoga, and therefore they are considered the essence of Bhagavad-gītā. Srila Prabhupada mentions that the middle 6 are protected by the other 6 on each side. Something like a book, you have the text inside and you have the covers on the outside. So the most essential portion is the inner portion. Or Srila Prabhupada one time gave the example of a sandwich. You have the bread on the top, the bread on the bottom, and the real stuff is in the middle. So the essence of Bhagavad-gītā is especially found in these middle 6 chapters, which focus particularly on devotional service. So viditvā, having understood Bhagavad-gītā, or especially the science of devotional service, one goes beyond all of the other processes. And puṇya-phalaṁ, whatever pious benefit one might get, whatever is indicated, pradiṣṭam means indicated, whatever pious result is indicated from doing all of these other things, one automatically attains. If one simply remains focused on the Vedic rituals, he's not very much appreciated in Bhagavad-gītā. Those who are following all of these rituals simply for attaining higher planets or a better life on earth are childish. Krishna says. Vedavarata, they're very much concerned about the words of the Vedas, but missing the essence. The essence is devotional service to Krishna. So one should understand the Bhagavad-gītā. Prabhupada mentions in the association of devotees. The Bhagavad-gītā is spoken to Arjuna. Bhaktosi me cādyam, lahasyam yeta. Because he's a devotee of Krishna, because he's a friend of Krishna, Krishna selected him to understand the secrets of Bhagavad-gītā, which are inaccessible by karma yoga, jnana yoga, or other methods. So, and Arjuna at the end accepted everything Krishna said and surrendered to him in the spirit of devotional service. So if one wants to understand Bhagavad-gītā as it is, then one should follow in the footsteps of Arjuna, or one should hear Bhagavad-gītā in the association of those who are following the path of Arjuna by devotional service, not the path of Duryodhana or others who don't appreciate the supremacy of Krishna, who think that Krishna is an ordinary human being that they can capture by their mundane methods. One who has a little faith in Bhagavad-gītā should learn Bhagavad-gītā from a devotee. Because in the beginning of the 4th chapter, it is stated clearly that Bhagavad-gītā can be understood only by devotees. No one else can perfectly understand the purpose of Bhagavad-gītā. One should therefore learn Bhagavad-gītā from a devotee of Krishna, not from mental speculators. This is a sign of faith. In this paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is going to be taking us through the process of gradual development of devotional service. That's described in Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu. Adosha. The beginning is to have some faith. Or sometimes Srila Prabhupada explains Shraddha as interest. Some interest. We have some faith. We come here because we have some interest. That means faith. We think, well, might be something here. We go to a store because there's a sale. We have some interest and we have some faith that some opportunity is there. We're saving money, we're getting some good product. Interest. Some interest in the subject matter. Or some faith in the subject matter. At least something good must be here. The beginning is to have some interest or some faith. Someone comes to hear about Krishna. All right, let me see what it's about. He has some preliminary interest, some preliminary faith that at least it'll be worth my time to investigate and see what they're up to. Adavashrata. And tata sadhusanga. The next thing is to associate with devotees. When one searches for a devotee and fortunately gets a devotee's association, one actually begins to understand Bhagavad-gītā. It's indicated here that one should search out an advanced devotee of Krishna. And especially one should place oneself under the guidance of an advanced devotee of Krishna. A spiritual master is a person who's advanced in the devotional service of Krishna, understanding the science of devotional service. Ye Krishna Tattva Sheki Rupa. Kiva Rudra, Kiva Nyasi, Kiva Vipra, Kiva Nyasi, Shudra Kenya. It doesn't matter whether he's coming from a Brahmin family, whether he's a sannyasi, or whether he's a Shudra. Doesn't matter. Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, that's not the criterion. Criterion is Jai Krishna Tattva Deva. One who understands Krishna Tattva, who understands Krishna as he is. Janma Karma Tane Vidya. Who understands the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities. Tattva Deva Puṇya-phalaṁ. He becomes free from all material entanglements and eligible to go back home back to Godhead. So one should understand the science of Krishna in the association of devotees. People sometimes ask, how do I find a spiritual master? Look in the association of devotees. Prabhupada says if you want to buy diamonds, then you don't go to the cloth market. You go to the diamond market. So if we want to find a bona fide spiritual master, then we shouldn't look among the mental speculators, among the magicians, among the followers of pious activities, pious ritualistic activities. We should look in the association of devotees. That's the place. Because, as Prabhupada quotes, birds of a feather flock together. So if we look at the association of devotees, that's where we'll find those who are advanced in devotional service. Not in the association of the jnānis, the yogis, or the sense enjoyers, but in the association of devotees. So, when one searches for a devotee and fortunately gets a devotee's association, one actually begins to study and understand Bhagavad-gītā. The process of advancement is not by magic or by some other means, but by hearing about Krishna from standard books of knowledge like Bhagavad-gītā and Srimad Bhagavatam, and learning how to put them into practical, the teachings into practical action. By advancement in the association of the devotee, one is placed in devotional service, and this dispels all one's misgivings about Krishna, or God, and Krishna's activities, form, pastimes, name, and other features. So this is bhajana kriya. In the association of the devotee, one learns how to perform devotional service. There are some practices to follow, some things to accept, some things to reject. There's a path of devotional service. It's not just sentiment, but practical action. So one takes up the path of Krishna bhajan. And the next thing is anartha-nivritti. Anartha-nivritti means the unwanted things within the heart are extinguished. Especially doubts about Krishna. Shraddha means some faith in Krishna, but there may still be some doubts. So those doubts have to be smashed by the weapon of knowledge. Yes. By the weapon of knowledge. That's explained by the Lord of Bhagavad-gītā. misgivings. Well, I don't know, and maybe I shouldn't perform devotional service. If I become a devotee, then what will my family think? Or will it affect my job, my earning? What will my friends? How will it affect this? How will it affect that? What about this and what about that? So many misgivings may be there. Hesitations may be there. Arjuna was completely reluctant. No, I can't fight, even though you're telling me to fight. I can't fight because my friends, my relatives, my this, my that. The sinful activities, sinful reactions will overcome me because this social consequence, that. So he had so many misgivings on account of his misunderstanding arising from ignorance. So Krishna dispelled that ignorance, that illusion, nashtammo. And then Arjuna was prepared to follow Krishna's command by fully engaging in his prescribed service. Misgivings about Krishna, about his activities, forms, name, that means that one may begin with some impersonal idea of God, that there's some superior truth which has no form, no qualities, no activities, and Krishna is a lesser manifestation of that. So this misunderstanding is to be dispelled by knowledge of Krishna as he is. Thinking of Krishna as one of so many gods. There's Krishna, there's Ganesh, there's Durga, there's Shiva, there's so many. And they're all on an equal level. That misunderstanding also is to be dispelled by knowledge received in the association of the advanced devotee. After these misgivings have been perfectly cleared away, one becomes fixed in one's study. Nishtha. Nishtha means fixed. Then one relishes the study of Bhagavad-gītā and attains the state of feeling always Krishna conscious. Ruchi, Srila Prabhupada glosses here as a taste for studying Bhagavad-gītā. One may have some more esoteric idea, but here, ruchi, one develops a taste for hearing Bhagavad-gītā, Srimad Bhagavatam. And bhava, the state of feeling always Krishna conscious. What is that? In Hindi, our Krishna consciousness society is called Sri Krishna paraṁ. The society for the appreciating the nectar of devotional service to Krishna, for bhava, Krishna, Sri Krishna paraṁ. One attains the state of feeling always Krishna conscious in the advanced stage when falls completely in love with Krishna prema. This highest perfectional stage of life enables the devotee to be transferred to Krishna's abode in the spiritual sky, the Loka Vrindavan, where the devotee becomes eternally happy. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purports to the 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-gītā in the matter of attaining the Supreme. So this is that chapter, attaining the Supreme. The Supreme is Krishna. He has his name, form, qualities, pastimes, and his particular place. Yami Deva Vata Devan Vitrin Yaki Vata Bhutani Yaki Bhuteja Yanki Madhyajanopi. The demigods have their abode, the ancestors have their place. Everyone has some particular place, and Krishna also has his place. That's described in the same chapter, the transcendental abode of Krishna. And it's more fully described in Brahma-samhita as the Chintamani-kā, the perfect destination for every living being. And that supreme abode one can attain by this process of devotional service, by being absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and especially through this chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. So one should take up this process under superior guidance, as indicated here, and make one's life successful. Some questions, comments? Okay.
What the middle six are protected by the other six? What are they protected from?
The Jnana-karma-jnanavrita, from mental speculation and fruitive activities and so on. There's so many ideas, anya-abhilāṣa, something other than Krishna consciousness, something other than devotional service. Krishna says, "Mamekam sharanam," just take shelter of me in devotional service. Manmana puṇya-phalaṁ. So these 6 chapters, which are devoted especially to that conclusion, are protected by these other chapters from everything else. Anya-abhilāṣa. Something else?
Character here was contrasted with armchair speculation. Could you explain what character actually consists of?
Yes. The character begins with control of the mind and control of the senses. Good character is described in the Bhagavad-gītā. Amanitva, vedeṣu, himsa, kshantir, arjuna, acharya, pāśam, shocham, sthānam, atmavedra, indriyarteshu, vairagyo, anam, paraṁ, vedeṣu, dāneṣu, viditvā, yajñeṣu, devotional, sarvam, like that. The items of knowledge are described in the Bhagavad-gītā. Srila Prabhupada explains that they're not exactly items of knowledge, but they're the methods of acquiring knowledge, or they constitute the path of knowledge. The beginning of knowledge is amanitva, humility. Now, young children are encouraged to be assertive, to tear up everybody else, competitive. But real character begins with humility. Amanitva. Amanitva means false ego. I'm thinking I'm this body, and because I'm this body, I'm thinking so many things. I acquire a puffed up idea, I'm American, I'm white, or I'm black, or I'm this, or I'm that. Some concocted idea of who one is. I'm a very good student, I am a very good this, I am a very good that. All pride and false prestige, which are symbols of ignorance. The beginning of knowledge is amanitva, humility. The person who's actually advanced is the humble person. Unhumbled, not arrogant, just the opposite. Mild, gentle person. Or Prabhupada explained in summary, the symptom of a Krishna conscious person, the sign of a Krishna conscious person, is that he's a perfect gentleman. That's the summary of the whole thing. Hard to find a gentleman these days. Cheaters, liars, drunkards, woman hunters. Where's the gentleman? Meat-eaters. Hard to find a gentleman. But speaking of a Krishna conscious person, even a gentleman is hard to find. So, amanitva, adamvitva, ahimsa, non-violent, not stuffing corpses into his mouth, or not allowing others to suffer for lack of spiritual knowledge. He wants to help them. Shanti, tolerant. Arjava, straightforward. What you see is what you get. He'll tell the truth even to an enemy. Vedas is the example of a perfect gentleman. He's always guided by principles of
Dharma.
Shanti Arnavam, Acharya Upasana, accepting the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. Now it's fashionable for everyone to be his own teacher. Some Indian philosopher who says, you don't need teachers, you should be your own teacher. Of course, that raises the question what we need him for. But the idea is popular, that everyone should be his own man. But Bhagavad Gita says, no, Acharya Upasana. One should place oneself under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. But the Jayadvaita Swami becomes change. If one wants to know the real purpose of life, one must. Because one must place oneself under the guidance of an advanced spiritual master. Acharya Upasana Shocham, to be inwardly and outwardly clean, styling, steady, Atma Vinigraha, self-control. Indriyarteshu vairagam, to be detached from objects of sense gratification. Manahankara, free from false ego. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha dosha redemption. Always aware of the miseries of birth, death, disease, and old age. Not glossing over them. Well, live for today. Take the good with the bad. All these slogans. What Krishna says, this is ignorance. One should be keenly aware of these things. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha dosha anudarshana. Asakta anadishpanga putra dara grihadishu. Not overly attached to family members. Not more attached than one is ordained in Vedic literature. A certain amount of attachment, understood, to be badly attached to family life is not advised. Putra dara grihadishu. What's that? Samachitta tvanishthanishto pratishu. To be equipoised with whether regardless of whether he gets what he wants, he doesn't get what he wants. He's steady. Samachita Swami, his consciousness is steady. And so on. So, perfect gentleman, that's the symptom of a learned person like the yogi.
And what's wrong with mental armchair speculation?
Armchair speculation, it doesn't do anything. We know one scholar, he's no longer. He was a great, fantastic scholar. Scholars are really something. They know so much if they're really good. They can tell you the ins and outs of everything. So we know of one scholar. He was expert in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Postgraduate study of Krishna consciousness. He even wrote a big scholarly translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And of course he was fluent in Bengali, he was expert in Sanskrit, great professor, and a drunkard. Well, then what's the use? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving the highest perfection of love of God. And this is kindergarten. No intoxicants, no gambling, no meeting, no this. It's like, these are the basic entry requirements. He can't even get in the door of the process of devotional service. And he's a great professor of the most advanced text. So it means that for him it's just something to study. Vedeṣu Prabhu was telling me there's an exhibit in the Brooklyn Museum right now of various items from India. So naturally there's so many murtis of Krishna. And they're there as art objects. And something to study, something to look at. That's not the idea. The deity is to be worshipped. And of course foreigners go to India and plunder the temples and steal the deities and put them in their museums as something to look at. Admire the art. It means they missed the point. There was a cartoon in the New Yorker magazine that showed a young yuppie sort of fellow up, well-to-do young man in what must have been a Park Avenue apartment with the windows there. You see the skyline. And he's lying on a couch with a book dangling from his arm, and he's got a telephone in the other, and the caption says, "Oh, nothing, just reading the Upanishads." Yeah, this is what we do to pass an afternoon. Lie on the couch, read the Upanishads, watch a movie. Go from one interesting thing to another, but it doesn't change our life. If one actually wants to get the benefit of this literature, then one has to follow the process, as Srila Prabhupada outlined here. It's not just that we pick up the Upanishads and casually read them or read them in the university under scholarly guidance. The scholarship is not the ticket for going back to Godhead. One has to become a devotee of Krishna. Then one will get the result. Armchair scholarship, simply sitting in an armchair in some club, in some scholarly gathering. What do you make of blah, 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 blah? Well, I've always thought blah, 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 blah. Doesn't go anywhere. Doesn't go anywhere. One has to come to Prabhupada after reading Bhagavad-gītā. One should promptly come to the conclusion of Bhagavad-gītā. Surrender to Krishna. Okay? Yes. Double loud, if you would.
The word ashram, Varnashrama dharma was very clear to Srila Prabhupada. The Varnashrama...
I'm sorry, triple that.
The Varnashrama dharma was very clear to Srila Prabhupada. Even when he was leaving the planet, he was talking about Varnashrama. But in India, Varnashrama is looked down upon because they were caste or exploited by the Brahmana.
That may be, but there's what is abusus non tollit usum? I think that's the Latin, something to that effect. It means abuse doesn't invalidate proper use. Abuse of something doesn't invalidate proper use.
Right. But how will that again get re-established? Because the whole world...
Excuse me, quadruple loud. Don't make it hard. You just think that. If it's worth saying, it's worth saying that.
My question is, how will that get re-established? Because the whole world...
Gradually.
If India itself doesn't accept it.
The Krishna consciousness movement has to introduce these things. How to do that is a big topic, but it's not going to happen on its own. Somebody has to push it. So probably one of us to push it. One way to push it is some of the older men can accept the Vanaprastha ashram, and they'll have more time to push it. How's that? Practical. Yes?
I was wondering if the information you're giving me
Oh, you really need to be louder.
louder?
Please.
The information you were referring to earlier on hospitalized and the different samskaras that are helpful to help one sort of get the balance and move forward in the devotional life of Krishna. I was wondering if you could give me information to me as an Atma mom who's aspiring to be a Vaishnava one day, and help particularly with maintaining the balance with, discipline, big example in learning, and also with dealing with, the material aspects of, driving to the grocery store and taking the children to school and things like that, along with, time issues with chanting and sadhana and all these other things that sort of get a little twisted around when you give birth and, have to take care of the household and children. I'm thankful that I have many years of listening to lectures, and I actually had the opportunity to live in an ashram at Ketanagari for 3 years before I married my husband. So I got a really, really big piece of that pie before I surrendered to being a mother, along with all the other things that come along with being a mother and a wife. And if you could give just a little information on that.
Some of these topics are somewhat beyond the realm of my practical expertise. The first thing is to keep it simple. There's so many built up sorts of things that we could try to do, but that's a principle in Nectar of Devotion, not to try to do more than what is reasonably achievable. So what's reasonably achievable? Our basic program of sadhana, one should try to follow. Rising early in the morning. I understand that children don't respect that principle, and that their prescribed duty is to make it difficult for their mothers to sleep at night. But somehow or other to adjust things in such a way that one can rise early in the morning. And the morning time is the best time for spiritual activities. Once you get going and all that grocery store stuff comes and children are all running around, then it becomes more difficult to do those things. So if you can do that early, which is the best time anyway, then you're in a strong position for the rest of your day. That's the most important thing. Chanting 16 rounds, that we should do. and hearing. For those who, I'm not the world's expert in time management, but there's an aphorism, I think it's G.K. Chesterton, anyway, look to the minutes and the hours will take care of themselves. And you can always find some minute to either waste or use for Krishna consciousness. So those who are expert, they're always finding some way. While cooking, they're hearing something about Krishna. While doing this, there's something Krishna conscious. If you're going to the grocery store, you take some books with you. You don't know who you're going to meet. And you get to speak something about Krishna, and you get enlightened. So it's possible. Some of my god sisters have assured me that actually it is possible, and that they've done it in their own practical life. So it's not just theoretical. Those who do have experience in these things can say that yes, one who's serious can do it. Shall we stop here?
There's one other thing I was interested in, if it's time. All right. Yeah. Sometimes when preaching to students, you have to clear up the Hindu word. And as far as I've noticed, Prabhupada almost always said varnashrama. But you said now that actually it's Sanatan Dharma.
Sanatan Dharma. Prabhupada uses that word.
And you said that was the system of Sanatan Dharma.
Yeah, varnashram is the practical social implementation for cultivating Sanatan Dharma. Or when we look at so-called Hindu Dharma, whatever that's supposed to be, actually it's varnashram. According to the Shastras, there's no Hindu Dharma, but there's the duties of a Brahmin, the duties of the Kshatriya, the duties of the Vaishya, the duties of the Shudra, the duties of a brahmachari, a grihastha, vanapastha, sannyasi. There are duties for everyone to be taken into harm. So that system of prescribed duties is there. Varnashrama charvaka purushena parakuma. Vishnu radhipeta. And the system is meant for the worship of Vishnu, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nanyat tattva jakara.
Challenging that it's hierarchical for those who don't have God consciousness. When Prabhupada was in Stockholm, he gave a lecture, and he asked the Jeep on the way, what are people interested here? And Jeep said, well, politics, and left-wing politics. So Prabhupada went into the university there with all these students and said, first-class man, second-class man, third-class man, and they went through the roof. And Prabhupada, was...
Yeah, Prabhupada put it on the line anyway.
Yeah, right.
People may accept it or not accept it, but he would tell it like it is. Even in the Soviet Union, which was dedicated to a classless society, there were first-class men, second-class men, third-class men, fourth-class men. The professors were not sweeping the streets. The street sweepers weren't teaching the university courses. The fourth-class men were not the generals, and so on. Krishna says this system is everywhere because it's created by me. It may not be recognized and scientifically followed, but wherever you go. And here we're in America, the land of opportunity, we don't believe in class, but the garbage truck workers aren't running the government. We're teaching in the schools. Why not? If everybody's the same, why don't we have the sanitation engineers, as they're called, these things? Why don't we have them teach nuclear physics?
The word India is also...
And for that matter, when you want a guy who will work, why don't you hire a university professor? You know, when you want somebody to smash bricks and really get a lot done, dig something and build a road, why don't you go looking for a team of university professors, you know, skinny little intellectuals? You know, oversized brains and undersized muscles. Why do you go looking for them? It's everywhere. There are different classes of people. You can accept that or not accept it, but everybody accepts it, even while they're speaking against it. They accept it in their practical dealings. When they need a doctor, they don't go to a street sweeper, and so on. Or when they need protection, they dial 911. They don't expect somebody to come with a book under his hand, and, you know, glasses and a what do they call that? Anyway, you know, dressed like a professor. A notebook and briefcase, well, not even a briefcase, whatever professors have. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a guy who's built like a tank, and he's got a club and he's looking to use it. He's got a firearm, and he says, you know, that's what they're looking for. You don't want an intellectual to come and analyze the sociological impact of the situation. These four classes are everywhere, just as should be properly organized. And the most important thing is that all the sections, everyone should be engaged in Krishna's service. The real problem is that the intellectuals became degraded, so-called Brahmins. It starts with Shringi. So-called Brahmin, son of a Brahmin, who cursed Krishna. That's how Kali Yuga enters. Kali Yuga deteriorates the Brahminical quality, so that the leaders who should be helping people to understand that they're not this body, that they're spiritual living beings, are themselves so contaminated that they think, yes, I'm a Brahmin because my father was a Brahmin. That means he's thinking he's this body, which is the first principle of ignorance. And what is the use of this being a Brahmin? Or there's some Brahmin. He became a politician and elected to the highest post in India. And someone asked him, Panditji, could you explain such and such thing from Bhagavad Gita? He said, what can I explain from Bhagavad Gita? I'm a politician. And what's the use of your being a Brahmin? So therefore Prabhupada's approach was that first we have to create a section of that who are Brahminical. If you want the social body to work again, then you have to put a head on it. Without the head, it's not going to work. Now they're busy creating feet, creating men of the Shudra category, people who are employees only. That the Brahminical culture is needed to give direction, vision. The head is required. And in any case, everyone should be Krishna conscious. Then whatever discrepancies there may be, we can get past. The problem on ashram should be Krishna. Shall we stop? All right. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai.